Hey, this is Alex from Voyage Financial, and what I'm going to be doing here is explaining how to make an offer in WA from start to finish. Hopefully, I'm not going to go for too long. So really just covering two things here. Number one is the lending process that we go through, and then number two, the offer process and what to do. And I will show you an example of a filled out contract for an offer in WA. If in case you can't watch the whole thing, hopefully you can spare the 15 or 20 minutes. But what we go through is how to make an offer, what happens if finance is declined, what happens if there's an issue with the property. That's really what I'm wanting to answer today. All right, so the lending process, really quickly. So you think, this is from your perspective, you think that buying might be a good idea. That's usually where people start. They think, I need to upgrade, I need to buy, looking to buy first home. The house is getting too small. I've just been driving past and I've seen that's for sale. I wasn't thinking about buying, but maybe I will. Whatever it is, you typically will start there. Usually the next step is then looking at realestate.com.au or driving past that sign or going to Domain or going to the REWA site in WA. Ideally then you come talk to a broker, someone like us, to understand, well, you've got this idea that you want to buy a property, but can you actually afford it? Is it a good idea? What would the repayments be? What sort of lender should I be looking at? So we will help you understand the capacity, repayments, lending options, and hopefully by the time we've seen this video, we've already taken you through that process. We might decide with a broker that you're talking to whether a pre-approval is actually necessary. So if you found a property, then maybe a pre-approval is not necessary. If you haven't found a property, you're still thinking about it, and maybe you're about 6 to 12 months off, then we probably wouldn't look at doing a pre-approval. If we've got years and years and years of experience, so if we can actually have a look at your situation and say with absolute certainty, like, yes, 100% this would be approved at 5 or 6 or maybe an entire panel of lenders, then potentially we don't need to get a pre-approval done. If we have a look at your scenario and we go, you know what, there's something that's outside the box or something that doesn't really fit inside policy. Maybe you've just come in from overseas. Maybe you've got something going on with maybe you're recently self-employed. There's something that doesn't fit the standard policy boxes of any particular lender. Then we'll say, look, maybe we'll approach the lender that this best fits, and we'll ask the question, would you accept this loan? Would you not? And that's where we'll actually go through the pre-approval process. But quite often for people who contact us, it's pretty clear, like, yes, this would definitely be approved. No, this definitely wouldn't. We've obviously got internal checklists and we can use our experience to determine that usually pretty comfortably. So we can decide whether a pre-approval is necessary or not, either way. The next step would then for you to start to actually look for a property and to make an offer, and we will put you in a communication group. If you're coming with Voyage, we'll put you in a communication group with typically the broker, usually one of our admin team, you and a partner if you've got a partner. That way we've got one single space that we can actually collaborate. If that offers, if you start to make an offer, and again, we can help you through that offer process, and this video will also help with that. The offer's accepted, an application submitted to a lender. If the pre-approval is in place, usually it's quite a straightforward process. All the lender needs, if a pre-approval is already in place, is a copy of the contract that you've signed, which I'll show you, and then a valuation that the bank does as well. So you don't need to worry about the valuation. The bank does that. Usually we order that. The bank will then send an assessor out or a valuer to look at the house. They'll say, in 99% of cases, yes, this is worth what you've offered. We get that back. We send it to the lender with the offer. We attach it to the pre-approval that's already there. An assessor picks it up and just goes, "Yep, this is fine, all approved." So finance is then approved. We've got some extra conditions to fill. So we've got to get some loan documents typically signed, sometimes all online via email, sometimes physical documents. And actually in WA, there's always a physical document because at least at the moment, and hopefully this changes soon, but as at mid-2024, you will need to be signing a wet signature, a wet document called the mortgage document. That needs to be signed twice. There'll also be a settlement agent involved with the process as well. So they're the ones who conduct all the legals with the government to ensure that the property that you've purchased is actually the property that you've made an offer on. They will, do all that paperwork with the government to ensure that it's properly registered with the titles, etc. And then we settle. So there's a lot of moving parts inside that, but broad process 1 through 9. That's what we do, or that's what happens. Now, the offer process specifically. So you start looking, and you make a written offer, and I'll show you what that offer looks like shortly. The offer is accepted and an application is submitted to the lender. Finance is approved. We get the pest and building inspections done. And I'll drill down on some of these shortly. We'll get documents to sign from the lender and from the conveyancer. There's a final inspection, and then you settle. So just to delve a little bit deeper on some of these, quite often real estate agents will approach the offer process a little bit differently. In order for you to make a formal offer, there must be a formal offer document in WA, and that looks like this. Again, I'm going to take you through this shortly. There might be some slight variations to this. Usually just the logo is different. It will depend on the actual, the real estate agent will put their logo in here. But they're pretty standard in WA. It's going to look almost exactly like this, if not identical. So again, real estate agents will approach this differently. To make a formal offer, you need to have filled that document out and signed it, and that formal offer gets sent, and that's what formally kicks off the finance process. That's the document that everyone needs, like the formal legal document that everyone needs. There are some additions to that, like the pest and building inspection we can add on. You'll get a whole bunch of general terms, like a booklet that you can choose to read through, or probably not. But that's the document that everyone needs to actually start the process. Unless you're buying like a subdivision or off the plan, there'll be some slight variations. But if you're just buying an established property, that's the document that you need. Now, some real estate agents, the initial offer process starts with just filling out like a one-pager with just some details on it. So it might be just a one-pager that in a Word document that the real estate agency has written up, and it might just have the essentials of the offer that you're wanting to make. So it's like bare bones. You'd be looking at the settlement date, obviously how much you're wanting to offer, what your names are, what the deposit would be, those bits and pieces. So just the bare bones essentials. Because you can imagine from a real estate agent's point of view that if they've got 10 offers on the table, they want to process those offers as quickly as they possibly can, and having a full offer written up takes time. There's quite a few details that you need to go through, and they would just prefer that to send a one-pager to you saying, hey, fill out basically how much you're going to offer, how much you need to be borrowing, and when you're going to settle. And then we're going to send that straight through to the seller, and the seller can decide out of those 10 offers or 5 offers or whatever, what they actually want to do. So the formal offer is the document that I'm about to show you. A less formal offer might be something verbal even. So you might agree verbally, in a back and forth to the agent, this is what we're going to offer. Would the seller actually accept this? And that offer process might be verbal, and then it's formalized with the actual physical document, or it might be the sort of that one pager that I mentioned. Sometimes offers are now increasingly online as well. It's like an online open auction process where you're bidding in live time up to a set date against other people. You might be going to an actual auction process, and if you go through the actual auction process, there's a process that you need to do to enter that auction, like live on site, like on one day. Those can be pretty stressful. But at the end of that, after that auction if you win that auction, you're still going to be signing the same document that I'm about to show you, like the official offer document. So that gets signed. Eventually, you need to sign that document and get it to make the offer formal, but it might be verbal before that, or whatever. Once we've got that offer document signed, then depending on whether we've got a pre-approval or not, we'll be submitting to the lender. Finance is approved. As part of the offer that you submit, typically there'll be pest and building inspections involved. Those are usually written up like pretty pro forma, like a standard template that'll be offered by the real estate agent. Usually those documents are designed to protect the seller, not to protect you. So you've always got to remember that the real estate agent is working to protect the seller. They work for the seller, they represent the seller, they don't represent you. So getting a buyer's agent on board is usually not a bad idea. If you don't, then, in the market, in a hot market, you don't really have any other choice but to sign the pest and building inspection as it's presented to you. Because if you can imagine a seller being presented with 2 identical offer documents, both same prices, same settlement terms, but one pest and building inspection says, is just the normal one where only something really like quite deeply structural is able to annul the contract. And then one that you filled in, which basically says anything that I decide is a structural issue is going to be a problem, and I'm going to be able to nullify the contract on that basis. That's going to cause the seller to say, well, I'm just going to select the one that's going to present fewer issues for me. So ideally, in an ideal world, we would actually enter in our own terms and conditions into the pest and building inspections and say, like, if there's anything that I'm unhappy with, I've got the option to basically opt out of this contract. That's not the legal wording, wouldn't use that, but something along those lines. If it's a really soft market, then you can potentially get away with something like that. Or if the owner's really, really desperate to sell, maybe you could get away with something like that. But in a hot market, they're not going to look at that at all. And that means that you are at some risk that you get a pest or building inspection done. And if it's something deeply structural, like if the roof is falling in, if like one of like a structural wall is caving in, that gives you the opportunity to opt out. But those clauses, those contracts, those addendas are typically added to, they're there to protect the seller. One thing to note is that with a pest and building inspection, stuff will always come up. So sometimes we get people coming to us and saying, we've just done the pest and building inspection, and there's like a little bit of damp in the bathroom, or there are some tiles cracked, or there's like a fence falling over a little bit outside. No matter whether it's a new property or an old property, like new properties, they're going to have usually bits and pieces wrong with them. Hopefully, they will have been sorted out. If there's maybe a bit of a builder's warranty if it's still in that time period. With older properties, it's a house. People have lived in it. There's always going to be like some scratches on the floorboards, or maybe like this light's not working, or there's going to be stuff that's wrong. Maybe the pool pump doesn't work, it needs to be replaced. And you can negotiate those things. If you're like, look, as part of our negotiation, you can add in whatever clause you like. We're not going to be proceeding until we've got the pool pump working again. Totally fine. That's legitimate. If there's no other offers on the table, you can negotiate that. Maybe the seller says, look, we'll give you like a $2,000 discount on the purchase price just because we want to get that done now. Like, we don't want to deal with that. We want you to deal with it. New pool pump and installation is going to cost about $2,000. You can deal with it. That's a reasonable outcome. Like, there's lots of negotiation and back and forth and things that we can find. But yeah, just a note there, on a building inspection, you're going to find stuff that goes wrong. You're going to find stuff that's not perfect. It's a house that's been lived in. And the older it is, probably the more bits and pieces are going to be wrong with it. You're then going to have documents to sign from the lender and the conveyancer. You're going to have a final inspection. Now, the final inspection is after the loan's been approved, after you've signed all the documents, usually 2 or 3 days before you settle, you will have the opportunity to go into the house and check pretty much everything. So you can make sure that the gas is working. You can make sure that the light switches all work and the outlets all work. You can go through the house and make sure that the property is still in the same condition and that it was when you inspected it to begin with at the home open. And you can make sure that everything is in good working order, because that's part of WA law. You've got to make sure that a house being handed over does need to have everything working in it, unless of course it's been clearly outlined in the contract the formal contract that you've signed. So that's a process. Sometimes people go in and they find stuff's not working. Usually that can be sorted out pretty quickly with like an electrician just repairing an outlet or whatever it is. Once that process has been done, you've got the conveyancer can't proceed until you've signed that off. Then you can actually settle on that property. You get the keys usually within or the same day. Legally, it has to be by 12 p.m. the following day from memory on the contract. But usually, we settle, everyone gets notified, we call you to congratulate you, the settlement agent calls you to congratulate you, the real estate agent calls you to congratulate you. Congratulations all over the place, you get the keys on the same day, and then hopefully you've got an empty, clean, well-functioning property that you haven't hopefully overpaid for. All right, so the offer, let me take you through this. So, let's assume now that you've gone to see a home open, you've loved it, you've talked to the real estate agent has said, yeah, we're looking for offers around, let's say $1 million, I don't know, whatever, $1 million, and you're like, yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe it's a hot market, and after talking to us or a buyer's agent that you're probably going to need to spend more than that. So maybe it's $1,050,000 or $1.1 million. Whatever it is at the time, you decide this is how much we want to offer. You've gone through maybe some sort of verbal back and forth, and you said, hey, we're going to offer $800,000. And the agent has laughed at you and said, yeah, I'm not writing that up. Good luck to you. Legally, the agent has to present, they legally have to present any offers that are made, but that offer formally has to be on this document. So if you are insistent that you want to lowball and the agent can insist. They can say, look, like I legally have to present it, but I'm not wasting my time writing the offer up. So they can just send you this document. You would then need to fill it in, give it to the agent, and the agent would then need to send it to the seller. Legally, they're obliged to do that. Of course, the seller's going to go like, no, I'm not accepting this. And so you probably wasted everyone's time, but legally you can go through that process if you wanted to. So just to take you quickly through this document, just to be very clear, this is an example. It's intended as a guide. There's no legal advice here whatsoever. But up here, the real estate agent's going to put their information. We need to make sure that your full name and address is in this section here as per your passport or birth certificate. So just make sure that if you've got a bit of a strange name, or just make sure all your middle names are included, like it has to be exact. Down here, property address, pretty straightforward. The volume and folio number, we will normally check that, and the conveyancer will. Just make sure there is something in this section. Usually agents are pretty good at this. This is all part of their training, how to actually fill this in. A deposit amount. So this deposit amount it's not the same as the deposit amount that we talk to you about. So we're going to talk to you about, do you want to put in 5% or 10% or 15 or 20% to avoid lender's mortgage insurance, whatever it is. The deposit amount that this is talking about is it's almost like an amount that you put down within a couple of days of the offer being accepted to show that you've got good intentions with regards to trying to get the offer approved, which legally you have to do. This contract says you have to use your best efforts to get finance approved. But this is usually like, maybe if it's a property for $500,000, maybe you put down $5,000, can be $10,000. If you're putting down an offer for $1 million, then maybe you're putting down like, you can get away with $500 if you want to, but usually, like, we're not putting in a full 10% deposit here or a full 20% deposit, because this needs to be paid within days to the settlement agent's trust account. All this is an amount that shows, like, it's a goodwill amount. Like, yep, we're serious about trying to get this property approved. Usually, putting down $5,000 or $10,000 doesn't really have a huge effect on the outcome of the offer that you put in. You can put down $50,000 or $100,000 or 20% if you want to, but it's not required. And just so you're aware, it's a different amount to the deposit amount that we talk to you about. Okay, so just to be aware, that has to be, usually paid. That whole amount usually has to be paid within usually 5 days of the offer being fully accepted by all parties, and it goes into the real estate agent's trust account. Okay, so purchase price, you enter your offer here. Settlement date, this is really variable. It's usually a good idea to talk to us about this. So it could be 21 days from approval, that's pretty standard, or 28 days from approval, or it could be a specific date. So if you know that you're leaving, your rental property lease finishes on the 1st of July, or maybe the 15th of July, you can opt to have this property settle maybe on the 12th of July to give you enough time to get out of your existing rental property and everything into the new house. Just make sure that you talk to your broker about this. So talk to us about it, because we want to make sure that there is actually enough time for us to get the finance approved and for all the documents and other bits and pieces to be done from the conveyancer and the lender to ensure that we've got enough time to actually settle. So have a chat to us, but it can be 21 days from, or 28 days from, or 14 days from, or it can be a specific date if that suits you better. And sometimes that suits the seller as well, because maybe they've got a property that they're looking to settle on and they need a specific date. And so actually having a specific date, we can actually line everything up properly. Property chattels. So property chattels are generally considered as property that's movable. So typically, like, dishwashers, window treatments, you'll see those pretty standard, entered as pretty standard. If you really love the furniture, you can negotiate for the furniture and say, look, like, as part of the chattels, we want like literally all the furniture in the lounge room or the whole house. If there's like a bookshelf that you really like, whatever it is, you can actually add that in and make that part of the amount that you offer and as part of the settlement. Now, for most of us, we're going to be choosing the finance clause. We can look at doing a cash offer even if we do need finance in specific circumstances, especially if the market's hot. We can discuss this because that will make your offer absolutely much stronger. There is risk with going cash if we don't have the finance approved yet. We can mitigate that risk sometimes, but absolutely 100% do talk to us about signing away the finance clause, because if you don't have finance, because we need to make sure that all our ducks are 100% aligned. The lender, you can keep blank. You don't legally need to put anything in there. Sometimes it helps to put a bit more detail, especially if you've got, if the seller's looking at 5 or 6 competing offers, just being quite specific. And the more detail we enter, the better our offer can potentially look. The finance clause, there's a latest time on, again, 21 days from acceptance is pretty standard. Could be 28. Just talk to us, and we can tell you what to do. You will need to sign this area as well. So down further, any special conditions. So common conditions include the contract being subject to satisfactory pest inspection, timber inspection, building reports. Usually these are addendas or additions that are added by the real estate agent, as I've already discussed, at the back of the contract. Ideally, we would be able to enter in whatever we like here with regards to the building inspection, so that we can pull out for any reason. In reality, it doesn't really work out that way. Usually there's a couple of competing offers, and if there's one that says we can walk away for any reason, we're probably not going to get that offer accepted unless all the other conditions are like obscenely good. Have a chat. We're willing to have a chat to you when you're making these offers as well about all of this, because we want to make sure that you're putting in the best offer that you possibly can. Sometimes agents will play games with regards to, not putting any price, or maybe something starting from, or like an approximate range. There's all sorts of games that real estate agents play, and we can help you sort of determine that to the best of our abilities. All right, further on down, this is really just a 2-page document. Again, there will be addendas and general terms attached to this that you don't really need to sign, but this is really the document. What you'll need to do when you're making your offer is, hopefully the real estate agent will have filled all this out, but if they haven't, then you can fill this out. All good real estate agents should be doing this on your behalf. But you then need to be signing. So ensure that your name and stuff is entered in here. Sorry, your signature is entered in here. You need to ensure that your signature is consistent for there's the same signature that you're going to use for all of your other documents, if you can, because that is checked by various entities, like by the bank and the conveyancing agent. They will make sure that signatures match. So make sure that your signature is consistent. You're going to date it, and once this is all done and signed, you're going to send this back to the real estate agent, and the real estate agent will then go to the seller. And if the seller knows your offer's coming in, you've already sort of verbally agreed with the agent's talked to the seller already, and there's some agreement, then it's going to hopefully be just like a really quick sign off. If the agent is facing, and the seller is facing 4 or 5 offers, then you're going to need to put your best foot forward straight away, because the agent's not going to be negotiating with 5 different parties. They do want to get the best price, but they also want to get paid, and they've got other clients and other sellers and other people. So they're going to try and usually get this stuff done as quickly as they can. If you're dealing with a bunch of other offers, then you need to be putting your best foot forward first. But you need to sign this off. The seller will then decide what they want to do. And if they choose you, then they will come back and they will countersign this. The agent will let you know. And then all of a sudden, we've got a contract in full force. You need to send that to us. Usually we're aware anyway. And then we start the finance terms. If the seller wants to actually negotiate, so let's say you're one of 2 offers on the table, and the agent thinks they can push you a bit further. It's not uncommon to see, or less so now because a lot of this is online, but it's not uncommon to see, 2 or 3 crossouts in the purchase price as the negotiation has gone back and forth on paper. So, the agent has forwarded the offer to the seller. The seller said, nah, that offer sucks. I'm going to counter offer with 10% higher. The agent sent it back to you. You've gone, nah, that offer sucks. Like, let me go somewhere in the middle. And, this might be crossed out a couple of times. We then will initial and update, and it may go back and forth a couple of times. Further on down, the joint form you need to sign. The conveyancer, if you don't have a conveyancer yet, you don't need to enter anything in. We've got some recommendations there, but you can just leave that blank or just put TBA. That's pretty much it for the contract. As I said, once the contract's fully signed by everyone, off we go to get finance approved. What else have I got in here? Some quick answers. So just quickly, you can't have 2 offers accepted at the same time. So do not be making 2 offers and hoping that you get one. Don't do it. If you get both accepted, we're going to be in a heap of shit, because we need to use our best efforts to get your loan approved. And we can't do that if we've got two offers. Putting an offer expiry clause in is not a bad idea, like a sunset clause. So, because you don't want a seller just sitting on an offer and using your offer as leverage to see if they can get a better offer elsewhere. So usually like 24 or 48 hours just puts a bit of pressure on. Sometimes not a good idea, but can be. Ideally, you need to use, or you definitely need to use your best efforts to have finance approved. That's in the contract. You can't just have an offer accepted and then sit on it for like the entire finance clause and then try and get out of it at the end. A really, really bad idea. You're going to get slapped for it. You're going to lose your deposit at a very minimum, potentially taken to court. It doesn't happen very often, but you can be taken to court for it, especially if the property's quite a high value property. Just don't do that. The chances of you actually losing your deposit are really small. So if we can't get finance approved, we've used our best efforts, we've got a decline letter from a bank. Usually this doesn't happen to our brokers because we know what we're doing. But if your finance, like we get blindsided somehow, your finance gets declined, we've got a finance letter, we send that to the seller and the real estate agent and the conveyancer, then the contract is off, you get your money back and the property just goes back on the market. You can wash your hands and walk away. As I said, expect there to be some issues with the property, with every property, whether it's new, old, in between. There's always something that's like, the building inspection will always pull up something. Whether it's structural enough to enable you to walk out of the contract is another matter. But there's always something wrong with the property. So with a report coming back, don't be surprised to see something there. All right, that is it for me. Hopefully that really helps. Go make an offer. Let us know. Keep us informed. Ask us questions. We'd love to help you find your dream property. Thanks.